I was just speaking with our mayor, and I thought that it was very refreshing and just a whole new way of, you know, leadership in Vallejo. I've witnessed Mr. McConnell put out videos letting our citizens know what's going on, what's new, and keeping us in the loop. And I think that that is such a great way to approach this leadership. And right now, it's such a vital time that we have this form of communication. And I wanted to thank you for coming here today.
Well, thank you very much, and it's very courteous of you to invite me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and hearing from people within the city.
That's wonderful. And I know earlier we were just talking about, we are going through a lot of transitions, and I think that Vallejo has a lot of potential, and there's a lot of promise. This could be, a whole new type of town, down the road. But right now we have a lot of big obstacles in the way, and serious issues that we're dealing with the pandemic, with some of the citizens being displaced, or some actual property owners facing a potential real estate crisis, not being able to collect the rent from people. That ends up us, having to answer to the banks. If you own property or land, commercial real estate is really in jeopardy as well. Um, what are your views and your ideas on where we could be and what you think it would take to get there?
Well, it's going to take active involvement and cooperation of everyone who lives in this city to move this city forward. We need to listen to each other. We actually need to hear each other. And then we need to find a way to make what we want to accomplish feasible, obtainable, within not only our methods of what we can do, but especially within the city, at least, the budget. Because as you indicated, there are substantial impacts upon the economy at the moment. Oddly enough, sales taxes lately have been up because people have been at home, they're buying things, and maybe they're not paying their rent, but it still translates out into sales tax, which is one of the most principal methods of funding the city. The property taxes have been going up because of the increases in values, but that's right now, and the sales taxes are projected to go down actually when people start returning to work and having to spend money on commute and buying gas and everything else, which does lead me to kind of an important request. For years and years, the city and the Chamber of Commerce have had a buy local program. Go out of your way to buy something here in Vallejo because the sales taxes go into the city's treasury, and that's how you fix your potholes and have better programs and have more control over your money. But it's never been really seriously undertaken. And what I want to ask each one of us in our listening area is that if you do live in Vallejo and you are driving back from Sacramento and you're getting low on gas in Cordelia, you make that extra effort to get into Vallejo and buy that tank of gas here, that you buy your clothing here, you buy anything that is taxable here. And that takes a special effort because most of us are kind of impulsive, and we see something in a store, whether we're in a Napa or Green Valley, we just kind of buy it. But instead, you got to think about the impact of what your local dollars can do. It's like hiring local. We want to try to hire local because people will spend their money here in the city where they live, right, more than where they might commute from. So I would rather have us buy local, have people go out of their way to make that happen, and then maybe we have some money to fix these terrible, terrible streets that we have. We're fourth from the bottom, and we really need to pay attention to that.
So instead of like each Saturday, I highlight a small business in Vallejo, and one of the things I suggested, instead of going and ordering online with a big box store, we have like really great bookstores in town, like Alibi Books, and we have Bookworm, and I definitely have been encouraging small business, but I'm wondering, like, I noticed like In-N-Out Burger became really popular here. Is there any chance like any big um, stores like maybe Trader Joe's could ever be a possibility here?
Well, everything's a possibility, but it's the store that has to make the decision whether to locate into a geographic area. So we're certainly open. We're very accommodating. We try to be open down at City Hall with the planning and the building departments, but it does take the belief by the store owners, whether it's corporate or individual, that their business can actually succeed, may have a go of it here in Vallejo. And that means they have to see people buying whatever it is that they're selling, whether it's a service or a product. They have to see a market here because they're
Right.
not going to open a store unless they already think there's a market there that will be able to meet their need for income. So
So if we
we've got to
build
go out
up,
of our way to buy here, otherwise that market will never develop.
yes. So if we build up our small businesses and we really support them and they grow, then it will increase the value in our community and maybe attract some of those bigger companies to come in and or or even if we had healthier choices, if we had some I want to encourage people, there's grocery co-ops
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. Um, and there was an initiative going on with the grocery co-ops. They were starting to plan here. Do you know anything about health initiatives and getting healthier food out to the Vallejo citizens?
Um, there is a newly elected council member, Christina Ariola, in District 6 in the South Vallejo area and over by Magazine, who is desperately desirous of bringing in food providers because it is such a food desert. She has a passion in that area. She has worked on one or two lots. She has a couple of people who own those lots that would love to see a business come in here. She's trying to find a provider. So there's an interest, there's an ability, and hopefully that'll come to fruition very soon. The food co-op is a fantastic idea. There was one in San Francisco when I lived there. My wife and I shopped there quite frequently. It was a very enjoyable experience. Co-ops are wonderful things. Clover Milk is actually a farmers agricultural co-op. That's where they came from in early California agriculture.
I remember, yeah,
Co-ops are fantastic things when they're used right.
right. And so, I know that you also you've been involved in Vallejo even before becoming the mayor. You've been part of the council, right? And done a lot of work with the community, and you have your own business here, and so you understand a lot of the feelings that small business owners are going through right now during the pandemic. Would you offer any words of advice for people that are struggling, that are maybe facing closing their doors, or is there anything that you would encourage them to do?
Very much so. I've discovered over the years as a financial services attorney that if you can survive long enough, usually the economic criteria will settle. You'll be able to handle the demands for money. Capital flow will improve. It's kind of like treading water out in the ocean. If you tread water long enough, sooner or later, that boat is going to come by that you can hop on and you'll be safe. But if you panic, if you throw in the towel, then you're going to go under. So the idea is to tread water, to survive from day to day, make what accommodations you can with people. Most people actually are fairly cooperative right now. Part of it's because of the federal forbearance requirements, but also they realize they need to stay in business as well. A little goes a long way. It's just like fertilizer. You spread it around and it grows better. But if we can all work together and not be overly demanding and just accommodate one another in order to get through this crisis, time will pass and we will get through this crisis. You can see it's coming now. It's going to be several months, too many months, but it's coming.
And I also had experience living in a very small rural town up in the Sierra foothills, and they depended on tourism and things like that in order to keep the town afloat. And as a collective, we had to agree to certain things, like one restaurant would be open on this day so that they could equal out the market and keep everyone afloat. Is there anything as a collective that you would recommend for all of the business owners? Is there any forums or things that they can join in order for us to support one another in the business realm?
Well, within the business sphere, they should work within their own business establishments, whether it's a trade group or the overall general chamber of commerce or their own ethnic chamber of commerce. Your idea of sharing the wealth, if you will, by one being open on Monday and another one being open on Tuesday is a fantastic concept, and it works when people are cooperative and close to one another. It's not something that the government can really dictate. At best, if you'll recall, during gas rationing, you got to buy it on the odd days, and I got to buy it on the even day, depending upon our license plate.
Right.
That's about as far as government can go, but they can't shut down a business and say you will only be open this day or that day. So it has to be a cooperative, voluntary effort on the part of the business owners, and that requires them getting together and agreeing.
Right. And I understand that Mare Island has been going through a lot of changes. Can you update us on any new Mare Island news? What is the state of where that's at?
Yes, I can. Last week I met with the head of Southern Land Company, who is the master developer that the Nimitz Group, the owner of part of Mare Island at least, has selected. They're going to be doing public input. In fact, I believe there's a forum coming up that I saw on the internet the other day, and I forget the exact date and time and address. I didn't bring it up off the top of my head. But they are now very, very open to public suggestions, and they want to work closely with the community because they realize that this is a long-term development. It's not going to happen within 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. So they're here for the duration, but they do need to hear from the people about what the people want. And again, it comes back to your original concern about how do we attract businesses here to Vallejo, which leads me into another interesting area. Recently, I was appointed to the Solano Transit Authority. I'm also on the subcommittee for the State Route 37 highway development. This is apparently a bigger hot topic than I had anticipated going in. I've been aware of it here and there, but not as much as I became aware of it last week. Last week, the Solano Transit Authority, which is composed of the mayors and the supervisors and a few other people, met. And most of the people on that group are from up county, Fairfield, Vacaville, Dixon, Rio Vista. There are about 4 of us from southern Solano County, if you will, 2 mayors and 2 supervisors. So we don't have the votes to start with. And as you know, there's been some talk about bringing the SMART train over from Sonoma and Marin County. To me, I think that's an absolutely necessity for the city to grow, for it to not become an economic pocket of poverty, to not downward spiral like you saw in the 19th century when the rivers and the highways or the railroads bypassed somebody.
Right.
Well, they're thinking, County people thinking, is that we want to bring in the SMART train along Highway 121 way up there in Napa County and then route it over to Suisun at the railroad station there, totally bypassing Vallejo. Isolating us, really.
So more on the Cordelia side, they will be reaping the benefits of that.
And especially Suisun City.
Yes,
because that's where the Amtrak train track comes together, is where you can get on the Capitol corridors, where you can get on the train down to BART, which will intersect you with the rest of the transportation system. So it's a major contributor to the success of an economic area. So I'm arguing that we have a spur brought down from wherever the railhead is in Napa County down to the Vallejo Transit area and the ferry building. Well, one of our up-county supervisors looked at me and said, why should we do that? Your city hasn't even done a feasibility study yet. So I argued that we should postpone it until that was done. He finally recognized the wisdom and the desirability of that and has acquiesced to a feasibility study. But here's where the public needs to pay attention to this, because this is not exactly on their radar. They need to articulate those desires to have a spur down here to their county supervisors as well as their city council. I'm aware of it. It's something I totally believe in and will fight very hard to see accomplished, because if we don't, we will downward spiral into a pocket of poverty. But the Up County supervisors and mayors have the votes. We don't. So they need to hear that the public in Vallejo and Benicia really want this to happen. Benicia has a rail link. They're hooked into the Capital Corridor by that if they can get a station. The mayor of that city wanted to have a station, and that idea was sort of negated by most of the people on that committee. But I intend to work closely with Benicia and their mayor and the supervisor that represents that area to try to make that happen. But we have to know, we have to hear from the public that they also want that to happen. There is, as you say, there has to be a demand. It's another service. There's no indication of a need or a desire or a demand for that service. It won't happen.
So the whole objective of the smart train is to lower it would improve the environmental conditions. Is that accurate?
Well, that's one of the considerations, but it's also for people who have to commute every day out of Vallejo, like most of our workers do.
Right.
And we're uniquely situated in that we have workers commuting into the San Francisco Bay Area proper, into Contra Costa County, up to Sacramento, and over to both Sonoma and Marin. I can't tell you how many people I know live here and work over there.
So it could significantly decrease the carbon emissions and have us less dependent on our gas-run vehicles.
Absolutely it will. But I think that's going to come about anyway through marketplace forces with the electrical vehicles, the availability of fossil-based fuels and the desirability of China having fossil-based fuels for a long time. The market's sort of adjusting that. But the reality is that we need transportation because a lot of people, when they sit down and they decide whether they're going to live in Vallejo or whether they're going to live across the bridge or up in Napa or someplace else, have to factor in the cost of their commute. That's not only the toll, which 37 will become,
right,
but also the cost of your car and your fuel and everything else, and not to mention your time. I mean, I commuted into the city for years. By the time you spend an hour and a half going one way and another hour and a half coming back, 3 hours out of your day, there's not much time left over for civic involvement or even family life sometimes. So we need to also build employment centers within Vallejo so people don't have to spend 3 and 4 hours every day commuting somewhere. They can actually find a job here.
Yes, we need more jobs in Vallejo, and I think that it's really vital for us keeping the money in Vallejo if we have more selections and opportunities for small business owners. You being a business owner here in Vallejo, if somebody was interested in starting up a business, what would you recommend to them?
Careful thought and education before you jump, because I, as a financial services lawyer, have advised people putting together their business, but also having to take them apart when it hasn't worked out. The reality is that 3 out of 5 businesses will fail within 5 years, mainly because of one, lack of capital. Well, there are capital sources available now more and more through designated programs that if you meet the criteria of that program, you become eligible for that cost. But that's only the first step. The second step is acquiring knowledge of the business in which you care to participate. So you want to hook up with Solano Community College, their business development center. You want to get into the Chamber of Commerce. You want to talk with the planning and the building department to find out about zoning requirements and whether where you want to be will meet the availability of what's permitted at that location. You need to do your market studies. You need to be a smart business person. You just can't open the doors and hope and pray the people will beat a path to it, because they probably won't. First off, they won't know about you unless they come in and do a community-based program like this, and you're kind enough to promote them, which is a great idea. I think we need to do that. But you have to really understand your own business and know how people are driven to your door to make it succeed. So you not only need money, but you need education, then you need perseverance, because they all start slowly. They do. But in time, you pick up momentum, and who knows what you'll become in time.
And I noticed there's a lot of cannabis types of businesses popping up throughout town. Is Vallejo benefiting at all from that?
Well, we are told we are. We are getting sales taxes. There are some people who wonder whether or not we're getting what we should be getting. And of course, that falls upon the finance department of the city of Vallejo to properly audit those businesses and make certain that they are complying with what is expected of them. But as far as I know, we are receiving income from them. Whether it's as much as was anticipated, I don't know. There's a lot of controversial views as to what we should do, can do, aren't doing. And again, I think that's something that we need to approach when we can. But for now, the people at City Hall are pretty well working in absent locations. They try to spend 2 days a week at the City Hall and 2 to 3 days of work working remotely. And I'm not sure how well that is working yet or not, but the reality is until we can build up that herd immunity, we're not going to be able to open City Hall or any other public facility for that matter. So it's going to take time. We're going to have to bear this burden of this epidemic until we can get through it.
So if a Vallejo resident is interested in attending a council meeting, there is a link on the Vallejo website where they can attend a virtual meeting. Isn't that correct?
They can indeed, and they do. There are several ways you can do it. You can participate in the Zoom meeting. You can call in by phone. And as mayor, I read the instructions at the start of every hearing as to how they do it. And some people are very successful at that. There are, of course, some technology glitches from time to time where we lose people or we can't find them or they've wandered away from their phone or their computer or their headset or whatever they're using, and we call them and there's dead air, which, you know, is in the radio business is verboten. We don't like dead air.
No dead air.
Yeah, but eventually we hook up with them, and of course many people are located in zones at home or in their office where their broadband width is not wide enough to sustain their conversation, so they fade in and out. And when you hear that, it's not necessarily just the technological shortcomings of the city, it's the broadband width that you have in your neighborhood. My home has pretty bad bandwidth, quite honestly, and it's like 1 and 2 bars, and sometimes it goes down to 0 bars. At my office, it's great. At City Hall, it's great. So it really depends upon where you physically are.
Yeah, I actually started recommending people turn their Wi-Fi off at night to give themselves a rest from all the electronics, because I did like a little EMF detector, and I found that they're really emitting, and we're in front of these computers all day. I definitely would encourage people to lessen their exposure to all of the Wi-Fi. And is there with Mare Island, is there still open parks where people can go out into nature? And
yes, there are actually 2. There's Alden Park, which is a more traditional 19th century park, and that's a very lovely place. And then, of course, the preserve is still open. The city has an employee out there 7 days a week who opens the gate and sits out there and closes the gate. But it is there. They're both there, and the desirability of the Southern Land Company is to see the preserve protected, enhanced, and improved and maintained as a wilderness area. The big challenge to the city is, well, who's going to actually run it? We don't know yet. But as far as I'm concerned, it's going to stay a preserve.
Okay. And I know that a lot of people come from different towns, and would you ever suggest, they use the ferry system, would you ever suggest expanding our ferry system, or I know that we could tie the train as leverage with the ferry system, and that could help even San Francisco people that may want to catch the SMART train. How important is the ferry system to Vallejo?
Absolutely critical. I can't tell you how many hundreds of people I've spoken to or heard comments from where if there was not a ferry system in this town, they would not be living here. We cannot afford to lose that ferry system. We need to expand it, both as to the number of boats and also where they pick up and drop off passengers. As you know, we berthed them over on Mare Island, and it started off, well, we can only pick up and let people off the ferry when we start in our trips from there. So if we're in between Vallejo and San Francisco and come back to Vallejo, unless we're going to be the end of our run, we have to have everybody move off the boat in downtown Vallejo. Well, that's rather limited. And I believe that Mare Island needs to be a full-service terminal as well. I would actually love to see the volume of people taking that volume reach the point where we could have a second terminal down by the Cal Maritime Academy, because for people who do commute, and there are many of them from up county, Sacramento even, for them to get off the road and come all the way downtown adds an awful lot of time to their day. It's 15 minutes in and another 15